to me. Anyway, welcome to episode 2 of the beginner C# channel I'm trying to do. And the last stream, in my opinion, didn't go well. And anyway, not a great start to this one, although I do have an excuse, I feel. So anyway, and I actually did attempt to do something on Monday, and I deleted it too because I've just about decided that I'm not sure I'm comfortable the Wednesday night stream anyway to be a place where I'm figuring out how to do stuff. And that's what I was doing on Monday. I was trying to figure stuff out, and then I was like, no one will like this. But of course I could, maybe I'm just too self-conscious and I need to get over it. But I am thinking of streaming other nights where I kind of is prep, but also to get real things done. So anyway, hopefully you'll enjoy it, what we're doing tonight. So this really is kind of impromptu. I don't know exactly what we're going to do tonight, but I know we'll work on some of our classes and such. But what I thought we would do is I would start by telling you what I did do on Monday that I was hoping to do in front of everybody. And that is I basically converted this application to a .NET Standard app. So I learned a few things that I thought I would show you. And this was all inspired by the fact that last week Microsoft had a .NET Conf web conference. It was really excellent, and I couldn't attend all the sessions, but I attended a good many of them. And it was just inspiring hearing everything, and I learned about the .NET Core, .NET Standard, and I realized, there's really no reason for this project to not launch as a .NET Core project right away. And standard project. So here's what I learned on Monday. First of all, one of the videos that I watched did show here's how you take a .NET framework app and convert it to .NET Standard, .NET Core. And so this is what I did. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to go ahead and create that one. And then I'm going to go out here, back to here. Let's make sure I'm not getting any chat windows. So there, okay. And then go back to here. I'm going to open this new project, and I'm going to open up its CS project file in Sublime Text. So you right away see one rather enormous advantage of switching to .NET Standard is that the project file is way simpler. In fact, you'll find this has all the file references and includes and all this stuff. And the way the new .NET Standard project is going to work is it's just going to look in the file system for the projects and for the files and all that. So anyway, that was one thing I did, and I did learn a couple other things that are interesting. By the way, I'm going to go here. I'm going to remove this. I'll need it. Okay. So the way that I converted that project file is I literally switched, I unloaded the project and loaded the project for editing, and I literally copied and pasted that and replaced the old stuff, and it worked. So this is now a .NET Standard 2 project and not a .NET Framework 4.7 or 4.6.1 project. And I have learned what .NET Standard means. It means that basically it means that as long as I comply with the specification known as .NET Standard 2, that I'll be able to target all the different platforms that .NET Core supports and .NET Framework or whatever. So, and there's other things I learned about compatibility libraries and all that stuff, but I won't go into all that. Now, one thing I did wrong on Monday is I tried to do the same thing for the console app and the game engine, project, and the game engine project, the tests project. And that didn't work. The tests wouldn't run, the console wouldn't run. And let me show you why. Oh, wait, that's right. I'm going to reload this because there is one other nice thing you can do with .NET Core projects is you can edit this without unloading it, I'm pretty sure. That was not true in .NET Framework. So yeah, look, I can go right in here and edit it. So what I did wrong is I had set the console app to a target framework of .NET Standard 2. And that's why nothing was working. And since I was not using the UE, that wasn't telling me anything was wrong, I basically was copying and pasting this. And here's the bottom line. .NET Standard is only for class libraries. If you have something that actually executes, an executable, and if you think about it, a test runner is an executable, a console app is an executable, then you have to target an actual specific framework. In my case, I was still able to very greatly simplify the project because I am targeting .NET Core. So anyway, that's what I learned. So this has been converted over to a .NET Standard, .NET Core project. And I'm really pleased with that. The other thing I did the other day is I went ahead and I added some tests. Now, I'm going to show you this. I've created 2 test classes. And I converted this over to use NUnit and instead of MS Test and so forth. And this is also running as a let me show you that. It's also running as a .NET Core app. So I just thought I'd show you this, that I can now take this test and I can right click on it and I can run this test. And it should open up it's compiling, and it should open up the test viewer here in just a second. Test Explorer, there it is. Yeah, let me pin that. So I can do that for the fixture as well. And by the way, I can hit run all, and it will run all the tests. There we go. And it ran the dice tests and the die tests. So I created a couple of tests, and if you want to look at that, we may look at them later. But anyway, so that's all now working. So what else is interesting? Okay, so I've got a much better project now. It's using .NET Standard and .NET Core, and I got NUnit tests set up. So it is different than what I used to do in the .NET Framework apps, and I like it so far. So let's talk about what I did to the game engine. So I added 2 classes. I added these before, but these are actually doing useful things now. So these are, notice the die class is, it is now rolling by using a class I've created called random. And so random all right, this is ridiculous. So what else can I talk to you about? Clemson's playing Georgia Tech, said that, excited about that. I don't know if you like that. I don't know if you like that the audio that's playing. Look at that. Just as I switched off, it's now back. Okay, but that music that's playing in the background is by Emil Pandolfi. He's a brilliant pianist, and he lives in my town. And I think it's just the right kind of sound, I think, for background music. But anyway, so as I was saying, I've got these 2 classes. I've got a die class. Right now, the die class, when it initializes, it passes itself to this rand class, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, and that basically sets the value. And it does exactly what this role class does. So notice it's passing itself to this rand class, and it is setting its value. Notice that I added a property called locked, and basically when you play Yahtzee, or in our case Dicey, when you play that, you get a hand of dice, and then you can lock some of the dice so that when you roll again, those dice won't roll. So that's what the lock property is for. And anyway, let's talk about this rand class. The rand class is it's basically, I won't call it a wrapper, but it's basically a way of, let me close this. It's a way of using the .NET Random class, which is it's not really true randomness, but good enough for dice. But the point is, the way you use the random class, you should basically use the same instance for all of your rolling of the die. And so the way I've done this is I've created this class as a static class. Now, if you don't know what that means, it means that I don't have to create an instance of this class in order to use its members. In fact, when you declare a class as static, all of its members have to be static. So in this case, I've created this rand class. I've created this is called a static constructor. And so when this thing spins itself up, the static constructor is guaranteed to run before you reference any fields or properties or methods. And it creates basically this random class, which is built into .NET Core in this case. And I'm setting this private field equal to that. And then I can actually roll a die by passing the instance of the die to the get byte. And notice that it sets the die's value. And first, after it does a result. So it gets the result by basically, in this case, to make it simple, I'm using the random class's next method to get a value between 1 and 6, and the next method returns an int. And so then I'm converting it to a byte and returning that result into the value of the die that got passed in. So, and why did I do it that way? It's just a good way to do it when you're dealing with static classes. So I just thought I'd now go back real quickly to the test. So the die has a couple of tests. So one is, when I roll the die, is it not greater than 6? So I'm basically doing 1,000 iterations, and in all those iterations, does it always result in a value that is less than 6? So in this case, the test is it's not greater than 6. Well, if it finds a value that's greater than 6, then it's breaking out of the loop and then asserting that, hey, this roll method produced a value higher than 6. So we also want it to be not less than or equal to 0. Same thing, 1,000 iterations in the loop, calling the roll method of the die. And I am, if it is less than or equal to 0, then I'm breaking and I'm asserting the result is that, hey, oops, that's incorrect. Good, I can fix this. The roll method produced a value that is less than or equal to 0. All right. So, and in this case, notice I mentioned that the die had a locked property. So locked means that when you roll, the value of the die should not change. So if I go back to this and notice, that's what I'm saying, that a locked die, when you roll, it does not change the value. So again, in this case, I'm going to 100 iterations in the loop. I'm rolling. I want to make sure that the value is equal to whatever it started out as. And if you remember, the constructor of the die class is also setting a random value. So anyway, if the result ends up being that, yeah, in that case it would does not change the value. So the result is set to false if the value is changed in any of those iterations after calling roll. And then that means this is true. I'm setting it to it's false, so it would fail the test. And again, just to show you that, where's the test explorer? Where's a test explorer? probably should learn the keystroke for Test Explorer. I did notice that I can't use the ReSharper test runner when using .NET Standard, .NET Core projects, test project, which is kind of a bummer. So here's what I'll do. I'll bring it up by doing run here. In this case, it only ran this one. So there's the Test Explorer. Okay, good. I just need to remember that's where it is. Okay, so that is my die test. Now, what about the dice? Now, if you remember, a dice, first of all, it has a collection of die, so list of die, and then it has 5 die in the collection. So in this case, I'm actually in when I construct or create the dice class, this is a constructor. It's basically creating 5 die, and if you remember, the constructor for the die class is creating random values at that time too. So and then I've got this roll class. So what does it do? It enumerates or goes through each die that's a member of this dice class, and it rolls each. It calls the roll method of each die. So in this case, what are my dice tests? So in this case, it's real simple. I wanted to say, hey, when I initialize dice, does it have 5 die in it? And in this case, you saw that it does. So we'll run just that test. And it does. Cool. All right. So that's a little bit what I've done since we talked last. I've converted it to .NET Standard and Core, and I have added a couple of tests, changed the testing library to NUnit for .NET Core. Okay, I'm officially an idiot because I did most of the last Twitch streaming recording with the wrong scheme so that it was showing me instead of the screen. So anyway, so what I'm gonna do just to kind of recover from that, I'm gonna just show you what I did. I did get a little bit from the stream, and I went over the tests as the last thing that was meaningful, but let me show you what I did in the game engine. So I've got the dice and die class, which we've already talked about, but I created a game class, and the game class will have a list of players. Now we know that for this dicey game, we're only going to have one player in the game at a time, and so it's basically the 2 actors or the player and the game engine itself. And so I'm still going to set it up this way, though. I could create 1 player and that would work, but I'm sort of forward thinking by saying, hey, let's create a list of players and then let's populate it with 1 player. So that's what I've done here with this game class. Now you say, well, what's player? That's another class I added. And so a player has an ID. So I create an ID property. And when the player is instantiated in the constructor, I'm creating a new ID for that player. And there might be future things where the player's is persisted to the database, and then I pull it up. But for now, each player will have its own GUID. And so a player will have a player name as well. And each player will have a game card. And so I'll talk about that more in a minute, but let's go back to the game. So notice that this is the constructor. It initializes a list of players and adds 1 player who I'm naming default. And then each game, notice by the way, I created an overload of the constructor. In this case, the list of players is added at the time that the game is constructed. And so that will allow me to, like, hey, I've got this external list of players and I can just kind of push them into the game. So that's all we have in the game thing. Now, I mentioned the game card. A game card is like, let me show you. That's a game card right there. Now, in this case, this is all the possible, quote, hands that you can have in our dicey game. And notice this, there's an upper section and a lower section. And those all have to do with the way the scoring works, which we'll get to in more detail later. But just for now, note that in my case, I've got a game card, and I have a game. I thought the game card had had sections in it, but I put that somewhere. Let me see. Hand. Yeah, that's correct. You're right. Yeah. So the game card, excuse me, the game card is a collection of hands. That's right. And each hand, and by the way, what are hands? So back to this description of our game, Dicey, which is like Yahtzee. That's a hand. So aces is a hand. Twos, threes, fours. So aces is, let's say I roll die and there are 2 1s. That means I'm getting 2 points from that. But that is a hand. That's a hand. So each one of these scoreable collection of dice is a hand. So you got an upper section and a lower section, and the lower section are more like, they're very much like poker in the way the scores are constructed. So anyway, let's go back. So I've got the hand class, I've got a game card. A game card is a collection of hands, and I can get the score from that collection of hands. I've got, let's see, hand. All right, and I think we talked about random in part of the earlier video. So anyway, this is one static class that will be used to generate the dice of the rolls of the die. And I think I showed you how that works already. And if you notice that the hand has a section and the type is called section, well, that is an enum that I created. So an enum is a simple type that has a list of possible values, and an enum is called a struct, so it exists on the stack, not the heap, blah, blah, blah. I mean, a lot of technical stuff, but this is a very lightweight class of sorts. It's not really a class, it's an enum, but it's a lightweight type. And anyway, that's called the section. And so I'm using that in the hand because, as I showed on the game card, each hand will exist as either part of the upper part of the game card or the lower part. So anyway, that is an overview of what I've done so far. So anyway, I'm going to edit this video into what I already have, and then upload this as my episode 2. So really sorry that I messed it up, but hey, I'll eventually learn to do this the right way. All right, thank you, bye.